Well, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be back at the sanctuary. So first of all, what is fixation? Well, for all of us out there, you know, it's not really the dictionary definition. It's we don't want our endograft to migrate. What are the types? Well, there's really two types, passive and active fixation. Passive would be considered radial force, where there is really nothing that's going to hold the graft in place for you. This is the Anurex device, which is the classic passive device. There's a distal fixation where you build from the bottom up. This would be the endoleak device, which would show you how you would start at the aortic bifurcation, build it up proximally so the graft really has nowhere to migrate. Infrarenal barbs or hooks. The excluder device, which goes infrarenally and has hooks that lock in once it's angioplastied in place. The infrarenal endostaples, or the Aptus device, where the staples actually are put in the proximal graft to almost be a sutured anastomosis with, they call them staples, they look more like corkscrews to me. Suprarenal stents, showing you here just a standard stent above it, here too, or suprarenal stents and barbs, which is the Cook device, and here you can see the stent actually has barbs, so you get both bangs for the buck. And then the fenestrated graft, where you get suprarenal fixation by using the device above it and then getting into the origins of whatever mesenteric vessels you need to. Well, what influences the type you're going to use? Neck diameter and shape, neck length, neck angle, and neck composition. Neck diameter really has no real indication as long as you size the graft well. CTA or IVUS should be able to do this. If you have a reverse taper, it may affect the endograft fixation and lead to earlier late migration. This does affect how you'll choose a graft. Neck length. Shorter length needs better proximal fixation. There's no doubt about it. Options: build from the bottom up, use an endostaple, a fenestrated graft. Angulation depends on what you want to believe and what you want to read. If you leave, the IFUs say 60 degrees. There are people who believe you can get angulated with proximal fixation up to 80 degrees, but you get quite a bit of kinking that occurs. This shows you some of the kinking you can happen, but the graft is still patent. Neck thrombus or calcification, more active fixation or suprarenal fixation. So for graft migration, passive migration, this is from Chip Sternberg and Sam Money, who kind of made a career out of attacking proximal fixation. And what they showed was with the radial force, at 36 months, there's an 18 to 32% migration. And then if you look at the infrarenal barbs or suprarenal fixation with barbs, there's really no difference in the migration you're going to have between the excluder or the zenith graft, which are the two benchmarks for this. So, juxtarenal. I know in this audience this might seem sacrilegious to say no treatment or open surgery. Those are options. Or you can use a fenestrated graft. So a graft choice, infrarenal versus suprarenal. What about kidney function? There's really been proven to be no difference. For the fenestrated grafts, the early work shows that there is definitely a difference in kidney function. It's actually proving today not to be as widespread as thought. So in conclusion, passive fixation or radial force has a high migration rate. I mention it only to really say that we don't use it, condemn it. A AAA with good anatomy, any graft with active fixation will work. The migration rates are pretty equal. An abdominal aortic aneurysm with challenging anatomy requires more active fixation, and suprarenal stenting alone may not be enough. And juxtarenal AAAs require fenestrated grafts. Thank you.